morning. Thank you for that lovely reading. My name's Keva Ward, and it's my pleasure this morning to introduce to you someone that I have really come to know a little bit better and love a whole lot, and that's Reverend Ray Nelson. And for those of you who weren't able to join us yesterday at the workshop, you missed a really fun, experiential, good time. That's something that I would definitely characterize about Ray. He likes to have fun. And so does his lovely wife, Robin, and so we just had a really good time with them yesterday. I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about Ray this morning so that you can have a little background on him. There's quite a lot of background on Ray, we find out. He's not necessarily going to share all of that with us. Actually, you know what, before I read this to you, I would like to just share a little excerpt from the Ministerial Call Committee not to be read out loud file. But what happened was early in the process, as we were determining who was going to be called as a candidate, actually who we were even going to call to interview, we received a resume from this guy named Reverend Ray, and I emailed him back and said, yes, we're interested, we like your resume, we'd like to contact you for further information, and I never heard back from him. And then I emailed him again, and I didn't hear anything back, and I thought, Reverend Ray must not be that interested. And so I got my little Ministerial Call Committee hat in a bunch. And we just weren't going to talk to Reverend Ray. Well, then somehow Spirit unbunched my hat, and I thought, maybe I should check, because he seems like a good guy. Let me see if I can get a hold of him. I called him. We had a phone number for him. I called him and spoke to him and liked him on the phone immediately. And as I was speaking to him, I was looking at the email that I had sent him, and I realized that my secretary, the Chihuahua who runs my life, had neglected to put an S in his email address. So someone named Reverend Ray Nelson somewhere else in the universe had received our invitation to become our next senior minister. So I just wanted to share that with you because Ray handled that with such grace and such love and just never missed a beat, and that was impressive from the get-go. So wanted to share that with you, and if someone else named Ray Nelson shows up wanting to be a candidate, we're just going to tell him that the doors are closed, we're set. So, but now I would like to read Reverend's official introduction here and let you know a little bit more about Ray. Ray is a 2011 graduate of Unity Institute and is the 2009-2010 recipient of the Mary Jane Onder Scholarship in Leadership and Academic Excellence. Ray was licensed and ordained by Unity Worldwide Ministries in June of 2011. In addition, Ray received a Master's of Divinity in 2008 from United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities with a concentration in pastoral care and counseling. Reverend Ray has served as Youth Education Director at Unity of Independence in Missouri, as a chaplain at the Methodist Long-Term Care Facility in South Minneapolis, and as an on-call chaplain for University of Minnesota Fairview Hospital. Reverend Ray currently serves on the Board of Directors of Peace Matters, an alternative ministry of the Unity Worldwide Ministries, and is a certified Healthy Congregations trainer with additional training in the art and practice of nonviolent mediation. Reverend Ray's personal mission is, centered in God, I live, teach, and preach a gospel of wholeness. Ray truly has an ecumenical heart and strives to build bridges of commonality rather than focus on the distinctions of difference. Reverend Ray draws freely upon his own personal life journey to assist others on their spiritual path. That's where the fun and hilarity comes in. And including a complete healing from a life-threatening condition and 19 years of recovery from substance abuse. Transformation is not a theory, but is a lived experience for Reverend Ray, which he joyfully and passionately shares with others. Ray believes we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and our work is to align the human experience with the divine truth of who we really are. Ray is the Director of Sacred Services, Adult Education, and the Pastoral Ministries, among other duties at Unity Christ Church of Golden Valley, Minnesota. Ray keeps busy, and Ray loves to give to people. And so now please join me in welcoming him as I give to you Reverend Ray Nelson.
Thank you for the warm welcome. Let us prepare for a time of meditation and silence. So I invite you to just close your eyes to the outer world and give yourself that permission to step apart for a while, to set aside anything that's on your lap or in your consciousness that stands as a barrier between you and that time of quiet contemplation. Let us take a breath and breathe in love. And we release that breath and we release peace into the world, for there is only one presence, and that is God. As we continue to breathe, we bring our attention and focus on our heart. We settle in to a time of quiet. We continue to breathe. If any thoughts arise, any concerns, we pay them no mind. We can come back to them later. We allow them to just drift away like a cloud in a warm summer breeze, and bring your attention back to your heart space, to that divine presence within. We set an intention this day to have an experience, to be touched by that presence within, for we know that as we touch that presence that is always available, it transforms our lives, our thoughts, and our very being. For as we connect with that wholeness within, as we connect with that divine presence, we release any thoughts of separation. We release any thoughts of limitation and lack, and rest into that knowledge, into that awareness of that divine presence which provides all to all. So we set an intention this day to open our hearts, to open our minds, to hear, to experience that divine presence that lies within our hearts, that lies within the very presence of our being each and every moment, that is always available. So we continue to just take nice breaths, relaxing into our chair, moving into a time of expectation, an expectation to touch that truth of our being, and to move into that space of oneness. And we do that in the silence, in that quiet silence, that divine silence. So as we settle ourselves into our chairs, making ourselves comfortable, continue to breathe easily with the intention to have all to be revealed to us. We relax now and we rest in the silence, in that silence. Well, that was a lovely song, and as I was listening to it is, if we could get there, then I'm out of a job. So, because isn't that what we want? When creation can be at peace, then all is well. So this, a lovely song, great, beautiful. I was actually talking to your candidate last week, Reverend Rob, because Rob actually married me, so he's a good friend of mine, and he said, I'm jealous, you get the choir. I didn't get the choir. So I said, that's because I get the choir. I first came into Unity about 3 years into my recovery from addictions, and struggling, trying to find that understanding of divine power that was going to help guide me, because I was raised with no church. I was one of these ones who had no church in my life, and I walked in, and I remember it was actually Rob said, God doesn't forgive you because God only loves you. You need to forgive you. And I've been there ever since, because I found a home that gave me some of both that mystical experience of having been touched by that presence that uplifts me into a place that I didn't even know existed, and yet practical tools that when I put them in my life, when I practice them on a daily basis, when I work them, my life unfolds in ways that I can't even imagine. I said yesterday, it's kind of like the elevator word is we're practical, mystical Christianity. Really nice, paradoxical, almost contradictory, but I think it fits unity so well. And one of my favorite principles to work is our third principle. That through the thoughts we hold, the beliefs we have in our lives, the words we speak, the actions we take, we create the reality we live in. That reality is not fixed by the external world in some manner, but in reality, we are co-creators with Spirit of the reality we live in. That was a paradigm shift for me from the thinking that said, life happens and then you die. Things happen to you. When I practice that third principle, I cannot be a victim anymore, because I'm responsible for each thing that comes into my life. I love that when it's good. Oh, I'm responsible for all the good in my life. And then I come over here. I'm responsible for all the not so good in my life. But if I practice the principle, if I practice the teaching, I watch my thoughts, I watch my words, I watch my actions, my life begins to unfold differently. Pierre de Chardin, the Christian mystic, said, there is an absolute direction of growth to which it is both our duty and our happiness demand that we should conform. There is an absolute direction to the growth our lives are taking, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously. We are in an ever-evolving spiral that is taking us to a deeper and deeper awareness of that presence of God. So as we wake up to our true evolving selves, we begin to have our lives unfold differently. The Apostle Paul said, be ye not conformed any longer to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I think this is, from Scripture, I think this is almost a unity tagline or truism. Be ye renewed by the transforming power of your mind, that as you think it, so it can become. And one of the ways we renew our mind is to become aware of the stories that we tell and that shape our lives. We all are living out narratives and stories of our lives at all time. And the stories we tell do not just recount the facts of the experience we have, but they recount the facts from a perspective and from assumptions and judgments about what that experience meant. We did a little exercise yesterday where I just did something for like 20 seconds and asked people, what did you see? And out of about the 35 answers that people gave, only 2 were actual observations. The rest were perceptions and judgments. So our lives are shaped not just by the experiences, the facts, but they're shaped by what meaning, what interpretation we gave to those meanings. I was recently listening to a TED Talk from a Harvard psychologist named Sean Acker, and he said it's not just our reality that shapes us, but the lens with which we view our life that shapes reality. That as we become aware of the stories we tell about ourselves, about our past, and about the meanings that those stories have, we begin to shape reality. For when we tell our stories, excuse me, we don't provide a factual account, we provide an account from a point of view. And that point of view can either hold you in bondage, or it can lift you to new heights that you haven't yet even experienced. Do the stories bring you joy, or do they bring you peace? Or do they bring you fear? What are your stories telling you? If we were doing a workshop, I would have you tell me what your stories told you, but we won't do that today. So our stories don't so much tell us in a factual account, they tell a point of view. They provide the motivation and the interpretation of what the story means to us. Rumi, the Sufi mystic, said, "Our task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." The love is already there. There's no more love available in the universe. God is love. There is only one presence and one power, and all that love is already there. The goal is to find any barrier that we have built and remove those barriers to allow that love to begin to manifest in our lives. The stories we tell either allow that love to outpour or create a barrier to that love expressing. We create the stories of our lives. One of my favorite poets right now is a man named Rilke, who's a German poet, and he wrote, "The hour is striking so close above me, so clear and sharp that all my senses ring with it. I feel it now. There is a power in me to grasp and give shape to my world. I know that nothing has ever been real without my beholding it. All becoming has needed me. My looking ripens things, and they come towards me to meet and be met. Nothing has ever been real without my beholding it. For until you give meaning to an event, that event has no meaning. The event doesn't have meaning that is just given to it. It has the meaning we give it. Course in Miracles says, we are never upset for the reasons we think we are, because we're always bringing our past into the present and allowing the past to shape us. If we're not conscious and awake to the stories we tell, if we're not conscious and awake to how the past is shaping our present reality, we are reactors in life, we're not actors. We're not writing the story of our lives, we're living out the patterns and the story that others have written for us. Two of the founders of narrative therapy, which is one of my forms of therapy that I use in pastoral counseling, write, "You never objectively know reality at all. All you can do is interpret the experiences from a point of view in the moment." In a real sense, we never know the external reality. We're only remembering pieces of our past and bringing it in and interpreting in a present moment when we are not awake. We are called to wake up. If we don't wake up, the history becomes our story, our past becomes our story, and the story begins to write us. The past that we have begins to write our present reality without us knowing it. In my own life, I went through a series of over 30 years. It seemingly failed dysfunctional relationship, one after another. The people seemed to change, but the event was almost exactly the same, over and over, and I just cycled through one after another, like God was so good it was giving me another opportunity to come face to face with what I hadn't healed yet. Thank you, God. From a distance, it's easy to be grateful. So to heal our present, we need to make peace with our past. We need to reinterpret or rethink some of the stories we say. One of the things I say is, if your peace is disturbed, if you have a moment that your peace is disturbed, and we always know what that is, start tracking it back to the first time you had that experience. Not the experience that you're having in the moment, but the first time you had that feeling. And then begin to heal that feeling, because that's what you're bringing forth. Begin to heal that past experience, because the past and the present actually exist in the same moment, because it's just an act of remembering what happened before. The Course in Miracles also says that I have given everything I see all the meaning it has. Everything that you see and you've said, this is the way it is just the meaning you've given it. Anybody ever been in a committee? You get a very clear example if you've ever been on a committee that not everybody sees the world exactly the same way. You're looking at exactly the same facts, you're looking at exactly the same data, but you're in a different experience because you're giving it all the meaning that it has. So until you know your story and are willing to re-engage your story in a different way, you're living out of your past. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, "Let him who seeks continue to seek until he finds. When he finds, he will be troubled. And when he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over all." The first time I read that, I came up to, "I will seek and then become troubled," and stopped for a while. I figured I had enough trouble in my life. I didn't need any extra help from the Gospel of Thomas. But I came back to it and realized that what it does, yes, it's troubling because I'm looking at a story with new eyes. And now I'm astonished. When you seek, you will find. And when you will find, what you find will often disturb your peace. It will create ripples in your consciousness that's going to upset the apple cart, so to speak. It will upset your life. And you know what? That's good. Because if you keep playing out the stories that you had in the way you had and continue to do them the way you did them, then all you're going to have is what you already have. And if your life is already perfect, then keep doing exactly that. But if there's room for growth, if there's room for that spiritual essence to continue to unfold, then we engage these stories in new ways, knowing that you're the author of your life because you've given it the meaning that it has, so you can change the meaning at any time you want. Viktor Frankl, the psychologist who spent many, many years in the German death camps, wrote that man only exists authentically when he is not driven, but he becomes responsible for his own thoughts. When he becomes responsible for his own actions and how he behaves. In the death camp, he found out that what they could not take away from him was his ability to make a choice. And his choice was not to hate. His choice was to see his captors with love in his heart. You cannot take away the humanity's right to make a choice. So the stories we create either uplifts us or they create a mask to the outer world. They hide us from our true self until we become awake. We must make friends with some uncertainty and ambiguity because we don't know what all these stories are. When we do our work, things are going to be revealed. Things are going to come into your awareness. And some of them may cause you some uncertainty, some ambiguity, or it might make you troubled. That's okay. When you work and live and have your being in a wonderful, blessed community, you know that others are here to support you when that happens. It is easy when we do this process to be troubled and then go hide because we metaphysically malpractice ourselves. We say, "Oh, if I was only spiritual enough, I wouldn't be upset because it's all good. It's all good." Well, of course it's all good because it's only God. That doesn't mean the experience in the moment feels good. And when you involve yourself in a blessed spiritual community, you know that they can hold the truth with you until you can hold it for yourself on your own. Jesus says, we are here to make manifest the kingdom of heaven now. It's not in another time, in another place, in another dimension, sometime other than where I am this moment. We are made to manifest that kingdom of heaven now. So that if my stories do not bring more joy into the world and into my life, if my stories do not create more peace and love in the world, but are creating strife and anxiety and fear, then it's my responsibility, it's my joy to re-engage those stories and think differently about them. We look with uncertainty beyond the old choices for clear-cut answers to a more softer, permeable aliveness, which is at every moment at the brink of death. For something new is being born in us if we but let it. We stand at a new doorway, awaiting that which comes, daring to be human creatures, vulnerable to the beauty of existence, learning to love. We stand each moment at the brink of death, for as we allow the old thoughts, the old narratives, the old stories to die away, something new is being born in us today. There's a story of an old story of a Buddhist monastery, and the old monk, the head of the monastery, a cat wandered in one day, and in Buddhist tradition, you love all things, and so he adopted the cat, and the cat was there. But the Buddhist monk did not like the fact that the cat liked to get up on the tables during dinner time and get in the rice bowls. So he ordered the cat to be tied up at dinner time. And then the old monk died, as old monks have a tendency to do. And a new monk took over, and the cat passed away at some point. And they brought a new cat in to tie up at dinner time. 400 or 500 years later, there are tracts of beautiful poems and theological understandings about the importance of tying cats up at dinner time. The simple act that one man did to remove an irritant had created in its story that had a life of its own. Charles Fillmore would call that race consciousness, that we have, that seemingly we have these beliefs and we wonder, where the heck did that come from? That it's almost like it's in our DNA. And until we know our own story and what meanings we're creating, we're tying cats up at dinner time. So as we learn to make peace with that past, to untie the cat and let it wander where it will, we do this with a light heart and we do it with playfulness. This can feel really heavy. Oh, I get to look at my stories and it feels really good. But it can be light, it can be fun, because when you look at a new story, you can say, well, if I'm the author of this story, I can write a new chapter. I can put a new ending. I can throw the book away and write a new book for my life. I no longer have to be tied and held captive to the stories that others or I have continued to tell over the years. So as we make peace with that past, we actually create a new paradigm in our present. When I was in first grade, we had a large old school with an old school bathroom. It was huge, and we had this giant fountain in the center to wash your hands on. It could probably fit 10 to 15 kids. And we were first graders, we were first grade boys, and so we were in the bathroom on break doing what first grade boys do. We were being very quiet and orderly. So of course not. We were splashing water and making noise, and the teacher walked in on us and yelled at us and made us stop. And I was so traumatized, I couldn't go to the bathroom for a year in that bathroom. Over the years, I made up a lot of stories about this teacher, and I embellished it with greater and greater details. But what that story did was it also affected my ability to trust authority figures, to trust people that they had my good, because I had made up the story that she had done it to me. She didn't stop a bunch of children from making noise. She had come in and shamed and embarrassed me. I had taken it personal. And a few years ago, I was recounting that story again, and bless, one of my friends said, "Really? That's the story you want to tell?" Well, I wanted to tell it, but I was no longer able to tell that story. And so I decided one day to sit down and rewrite that. And I gave her the motivation that the year before, someone had got hurt in the bathroom. And she so loved her children that she would go to any extent to make sure that they were safe, even to the point of embarrassing herself by walking into the bathroom. Now that's a different story that I began to write and hold on to and shape. That's a different story that I now tell about her when that subject comes up. That's a different story that gives shape to my life. I now have a story about people who love me so much that they will do anything, including embarrassing themselves in a public place to assure my safety. That's a different story than this woman is so after me that she will do anything to embarrass and hurt me. It's a different story, and it allows my life to unfold in different ways, even if it's just a very subtle way, because I had forgotten that story many, many times. When we give shape to new stories, when we rewrite some chapters, when we give new motivations, different experiences begin to show up in your present reality. Time's not linear, time just is. So the past and present are happening at the same moment. So as you change that reality of your past and you give new shape to that story, you give new interpretation to those events, that present reality begins to change in ways that you don't first recognize. And then all of a sudden you wonder, why is my life unfolding differently here? You have that power to rewrite the stories of your life. So I invite you into looking at what stories you say. When something comes up, does that story bring you joy, bring you peace, bring more love into the world, or does it some way hold you in bondage? And if it holds you in bondage, know that you have the power in you to rewrite that story because you have given it all the meaning that it has. So I invite you into a new relationship with yourself, and I love you, and I bless you, and I behold the living presence of God in each one of you. Namaste.